NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partner. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Ready to pop the question and take advantage of 30% off? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds. And they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com to get 30% off select lab-grown diamonds. That's BlueNile.com for 30% off lab-grown diamonds. BlueNile.com.
Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett, battling a cold Conlin. I'm joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, this feels like the MJ flu game of sorts. I know we've both had ours over the years, but this is special stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I did reach out to some bigger names, you know, the Vadleys, the Brian Shores, the Curtis Keatons, those people to try and replace it. But it's good to know that Bennett Conlin is there for me if they don't offer to come onto the podcast. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. It's inspiring stuff. Got my green tea.
Green tea? You're a green tea guy?
Fogging up my glasses there.
Wow.
Watch this. Yeah.
This is the content everyone comes for. Bennett fogging up his glasses. That plays exceptionally well to the podcast audience, where about 90% of our listens come from.
Yeah, my apologies to them. But, you know, it's almost July. It's really the doldrums of the college sports season. So if you tuned in expecting a lot, that's on you.
Exactly. You put the blame on the listener. If you expected...
This is a masterclass podcast.
This is content. We're team content. Whatever it takes, content it up.
I would say that's correct.
Exactly. You know what else I would say is correct?
Oh, this will be good.
The fact that BetOnline is your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, boxing, you name it. If there's fighting, you can bet on it with BetOnline. Every stat, I don't know if that's true. You probably can't bet on like your two friends in the backyard brawling, but like, you know, like nationally sanctioned fights. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, I love how I won't bash a advertiser, never mind. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's promo code BLEAV, to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. Thanks. I'm not battling through a flu, but it feels like it when I read the BetOnline ad read.
I don't know if that's a compliment to their ad read or not.
Take it for what you will.
What else we got? We got any other housekeeping? Follow us, subscribe, like, and subscribe. We want to get our YouTube. Are we at 300 yet? Subscribers? We're close.
What was that noise?
Sorry, that was me. When I go to YouTube, it automatically goes to a video because I'm like an idiot. 298 subscribers.
We're at 298?
Yeah, so subscribe, people. Get us to 300.
Will you be our 300th subscriber? Maybe, maybe not.
Now we're at 299. I subscribed for my work email.
Hell yeah. That's how you do it. I got to make sure I'm subscribed for my own personal.
That could be 300 then.
That could be 300. While you're listening along, Ross said take some 3-notch for that cold. We don't mention 3-notch anymore. Just kidding. Still love it. I still love 3-notch. They're great people. Check them out in Richmond and Harrisonburg. And
no
free publicity here. No free ads here. What was I saying? Oh, if you're following along, if you're watching right now on the stream, be sure to, if you want to ask some questions, get your comments in. Be sure to comment. Ross said, oops. Be sure to comment. You can do it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever it is. Drop a comment, drop a question, drop a concern, whatever you want. You know, just some thoughts. down there, and we'll get to them. We'll put them up on the screen, and we'll talk through them. We do have a good bit of listener questions coming up later in the podcast. Oh, Dirty Bird 713 just followed for the 300.
Let's go. Dirty Bird 713 also had what I would consider to be, having just scrolled them, my
one of the better
favorite
questions.
listener question of the day.
All right, we'll be getting to listener questions, I'd say in about 20 or so-ish minutes. So if you just want to skip to that part of the podcast, sure. Because this podcast is going to be all over the place. It's pure off-season stuff. Mainly, Bennett asked if I wanted to do a podcast this week. I mainly just wanted to see his bright, glowing face. I wanted to hear his cold voice, and I just wanted to make him suffer through.
I said, sir, I'm so sick, please. And you said, get your ass on here.
I said, content. We need the content. You did send me a very interesting text this week.
Where I praise Charlotte?
Yes, thank you. So we'll start talking JMU football now, because football is less than 70 days away. I believe kickoff in Charlotte at Jerry Richardson Stadium. We can talk about the questionable name of their stadium, considering Jerry Richardson is a disgraced NFL owner for being an active racist, but that's besides the point. JMU football opens up their season down in the Queen City against the 49ers on August 31st, about 66 days away. You had an interesting text this week. Do you want to tee it up, or do you want me to kind of out you here?
Well, I guess my point, I don't think Charlotte will be quite as bad as last year when they were 3-9. And even when they were 3-9, they were actually kind of competitive in some games. I remember they hung with Maryland early in that game because we watched part of that or paid attention to part of that because that was after UVA JMU that same week. They kind of hung with Maryland. They had some other games where they played pretty well. They took Memphis to overtime. Memphis is one of the better teams in the American last year, especially offensively. They have a lot of talent. They reloaded key positions, including quarterback, running back, receiver with Power 5 transfers. Defensively, I think their defensive line could be sneaky good. They have one of the best corners in, Balfour in the conference. I don't want to say that it's going to be like a super challenging JMU is going to lose week 1 game, but I'd be interested to see. I know we had some people watching the live stream, sort of their takes. I become glowing. Let me put my thing down. But people are watching.
I love the putting down
today. People are the people who are watching the live stream, and then for you also, Jack. My question would be, scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel about that Charlotte game? 10 being like hard win, hardest game of the year, 1 being cakewalk FCS. Where in that range does that game fall for you?
For me, 10 being cakewalk or
other
1
way,
being
other way. 1's cakewalk, 10's hard.
I think it's about a 5 or a 6. And I think a lot of JMU fans are thinking it's going to be like a 2 or a 3. I think it's going to be difficult. Charlotte last year ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in the American Athletic Conference. So top half of the American Athletic Conference in defensive EPA. So expected points added. They rank 68th in the country in defensive EPA, which is not a number to kind of put your nose up at. They're a solid defense that were put in some really difficult spots time and time again by an underachieving offense. The offense at times last year was allergic to moving the football, and yet they somehow still finished 105th in the nation in offensive EPA, which is still horrible, but I thought it was much, much worse than that. Their rushing attack ranked 88th in the nation, and their passing attack ranked 108th, and they were one of the worst teams in the nation in early down success rate and early down EPA. So they didn't really do anything right offensively, and yet their defense still was able to kind of hold their own and played pretty darn well all season. With that being said, I don't fear their offense in a way where they're going to be able to put up even 10 points on a JMU defense that we really don't know what to expect out of. But I think their offense is still going to be pretty bad. They added a ton of transfers. They added, I believe, a Florida backup who's the expected starter for the 49ers. That might be the difference, because last year they were trotting out like their 4th string quarterback at times, hoping he could provide a spark, and nothing ever clicked for that offense. They
Yeah.
did lose their best running back. They did lose their best weapons offensively to, I believe, the NFL draft. Maybe that was 2 years ago. They lost to the transfer portal like a lot of group of 5 teams. So their offense might be anemic again this year, unless they have a really good transfer quarterback, but we don't know really how good he's going to be since he was the backup at Florida.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing that's fascinating for me is there's a little bit of, is there any fear week one, very new roster, road game, like weird stuff can happen. You don't always play well in week one. Like last year, JMU was, in my opinion, very bad in week one, but they played Bucknell. So I think that's what also gives me a little fear. It's a strange one to open with, because if you're open with a Power Five and you lose, which they had in years past at the FCS, doesn't really matter. If you open with like an FCS Morehead State kind of game, you know you're going to cruise and work through some stuff. Same with Bucknell. This is one where it's on the road against a group of 5 team where you kind of have to show up and play decent football. That's the part, I guess, that gives me just a little bit of stress, because Charlotte does have talent, even if they aren't great.
Yeah, Brian on YouTube said his prediction is college football playoff for the football team and 30 wins in men's basketball. We'll get to basketball in a little bit. If they're making the college football playoff, I don't think this is just a win. I think this has to be a convincing win, because you might finish the year with one loss. Well, there's a likelihood you finish the year with one loss, and there's probably going to be one other or 2 other group of 5 teams with one loss. Then you're going to need a convincing win over a team that is probably going to finish middle of the pack in the American Athletic Conference. And it's going to be a tough environment. I mean, Jerry Richardson Stadium isn't the biggest. It's not an intimidating place to play per se, but Duke went in there, what was that, 3 years ago in 2021 to open up that season and fell. The crowd, especially early on in the season before they've been beaten down by losses, when there's still hope, their student section comes out in waves. They are a passionate fan base. They care. It's going to be a tougher environment than maybe, I don't know, Tulsa.
Yeah, it'll be a bit of a test there, and I still think they win the game, but it's one that has maybe a little bit more of my attention than it did a couple weeks ago.
I think we'll learn a lot about the offense in this game, because Charlotte's defense is good. So if they're, in theory, on paper, they'll be good. So if they're running through the 49ers defense like a hot knife through butter, then I expect them to be a very good offense this upcoming year. Now, if they're struggling against Charlotte, I don't think it's time to hit the panic alarm, because I think their defense is going to be good. So I expect them to struggle a little bit, maybe only put up 24 points. But that's going to tell you a lot about this team offensively.
Yeah, you said we had a comment mentioning college football playoff, and I think fans, myself included, think that that's a realistic, maybe not a realistic expectation, but a realistic goal, I think, for JMU is to contend for the Sun Belt this year, possibly win the Sun Belt, even with the coaching turnover, even with the roster turnover. I was looking through this earlier today. I found this very fascinating. JMU's had kind of crazy success recently, the first year of a head coach. So even dating back to Mickey Matthews, he took over for Alex Wood. Alex Wood was 3-8 in 1998. Mickey Matthews took over in 1999. They go 8-4 with a playoff berth. Pretty solid. Matthews stays obviously for quite a long time. They're 6-6 in 2013. His final season, don't make the playoffs. Withers comes in. They go 9-4, make the playoffs, lose in the first round. Then you have Houston right after Withers. He's taken over.
Erasure, man.
I know. My apologies. I was scrolling quick. 14-1 his first year. That's after a 9-3 season. He obviously made the defense way better. They win the national championship too. Let's not forget about that. Incredible first year. Signetti takes over a team that sort of sputtered a little bit, finished 9-4. They go 14-2, play for the national championship. Like, it's not crazy to have high expectations when you've seen, like, what is that? The last 4 coaches to take over spanning multiple decades have all come in and immediately won. Like, I think the worst record there is 8-4. JMU's win total this year is 8.5. It's kind of crazy to think, but like they should win a lot of games.
Can I throw a wrench in that though?
Yeah.
That was pre-transfer portal. And this is the first time that not only did they lose a coach, but they lost their entire coaching staff, of course. Aiden Fisher, Jalen Walker, Tyler Stevens, Kaylon Black, Mikel Kamara, Tyson Lawton, James Carpenter, Zach Horton, Nick Kidwell, Carter Miller, Caden Schickel, Elijah Surratt, Brent Austin, Jordan McLeod, Ibrahim Berry. That last one doesn't matter. Jordan McLeod.
That's true. But then they also brought in like a former Pac. Like, I think that's the part that, like, the portal, obviously they lost a lot. They also had what I consider to be a pretty nice haul.
Yeah, they did.
So I think that's what's so exciting is, like, the schedule's not that hard. They brought in a lot. Chesney is supposed to be the real deal. They have a previous history of, like, winning right away and not needing these rebuilds with new coaches coming in. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the expectations feel like they're extremely high. So I think that Charlotte game is going to be particularly fascinating because that's one where you got to find ways to win pretty quick and look good, because if you drop that one, you have no margin for error the rest of the year in terms of the college football playoff.
Not even if you drop it. I mean, if you're winning 24-21 in like a gutty performance, while that will feel great, and here we are in June, late June, already saying you have to win big, but there's a chance that Charlotte doesn't perform well in the American Athletic Conference, and all of a sudden let's say you drop one or two games and you're tied with, I don't know, a Liberty and I'm blanking on another G5 to pull up quickly, but
I think some of the other ones, the issue, JMU's schedule is kind of weak. So I think a team almost like a Boise State or like a Memphis, some of those to UTSA, Tulane, some of them. Yeah. So you're right. If you both have a mutual, let's say you compare it against Tulane or something, and you both, like, that's your one AAC game and Charlotte goes 2-10 and you beat them by 3. It's not going to look great at the end of the year, especially if you don't beat North Carolina. Like if one of your losses is UNC.
Yeah. So it's a game that carries a surprising amount of weight in week 1. And you raised a good point about Bucknell earlier. If they played that game they played against Bucknell this year, they might lose.
Yeah, that was brutal.
But also they may not have started Alonzo Barnett if that was.
And
Charlotte.
Also probably tackled in the offseason.
Yeah, it's the fact they did not tackle. Ross or 11 on YouTube said Texas State football is good. This is a good segue from Jordan McLeod. Texas State football is being touted as having a high-powered offense. I have doubts. This is Ross. I have doubts about McLeod unless they have a QB whisperer like Sinceri. What are our thoughts?
I think Kinney might qualify. Ask the whisperer. Would that be allowed? Their head coach, right? He's everywhere he's been. They've had crazy high-powered offenses. They had what was it, Finley last year, who had not really been good throughout his college career. Was like wildly inconsistent. They brought him in. He was awesome. And then they wanted to go get somebody else better. It kind of backfired on him, but they ended up getting McLeod. It seems similar to JMU, where like the system is so friendly to quarterbacks. I would be surprised if Jordan has a bad year.
And they probably will have a high-powered offense because in a quarterback-friendly offense a year ago, McLeod put up gaudy numbers and won Sun Belt Player of the Year. Strong chance he may become I couldn't confirm this, but I'm 99% sure Jordan McLeod, if he wins the Sun Belt Player of the Year award this year, will become the first ever player to win a Conference Player of the Year award in back-to-back years with 2 different teams.
That'd be pretty sick.
Transfer portal era, baby.
Yeah, they were scoring like absurd amounts of points last year.
Kenny's a good coach. Yeah. Questionable decisions in the offseason with transfer portal, but the dude can coach. If McLeod fails there, I would be very surprised.
They scored 50-plus points in conference games twice last year, which I think is pretty impressive. JMU didn't have a 50, or they had one Coastal right at the end of the year. Those are 150-plus point game. They scored 77 in their FCS game, went over Jackson State. Like, I think McLeod's going to be in a system that is, like, even if he declines or regresses at all, his stats, I think, are still going to be gross. I think they'll be scary. I think they're like a very deserving favorite in the West, Texas State.
I agree. I mean, there was a point last year where it looked like it was their division to lose, but they didn't lose it. So another text you sent me, and really I was just scrolling through the text while I was putting together the outline.
Good stuff.
Do we have any concerns with the wide receiver room?
Yeah.
You
I'm
do? I
starting to
thought
have
I thought I quelled your
you
worry.
might have, you might have. The more I look at like different positions and the schedule, because I think the difference is like I don't really have concerns that they're going to go 8-4. Like I think that even if the receivers aren't great, I think they could go 8-4. I'm talking about like I'm more concerned if they're a legit college football playoff contender, like this is a position that worries me. Like it might need to get a little better. So I would say receiver.
Oh, did Bennett freeze?
NetCredit is here to say yes, because you're more than a credit score. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
The sweet sound of sports you love from Sling. The collide of football pads. The squeak of shoes on a basketball court. The crack of the bat on a home run. The slice of skates cutting across the ice. But what about this one? That's the sound of all the sports you love, all at once. Starting at $40 a month. Experience it all live with Sling.
Or did I freeze? I think Bennett froze, which is shocking because I thought I had the worst internet today. But Bennett, nice and frozen there on the right side of the screen. I think where he was going is that they don't necessarily have a ton of talent. I'm not exactly sure where he was going with it, but it's something that we've talked about a few times during this offseason where the wide receiver room, the wide receiver core, they have a ton of potential, but they're just not a hugely proven group. The only real proven entity that they have in that room is Cam Ross, the UConn transfer, who has struggled with health in his career. Now, he probably will show up in a big way, but after that, who's your wide receiver two? Who's your slot receiver? How are you going to kind of divvy up the targets? Is it a run heavy team with George Pettaway and Io and Day? Probably will be to a certain extent. And I imagine Dean Kennedy and Bob Chesney will be able to really craft some interesting things up on the offensive side of the ball. But you got Ymir Knight, a 5'8", 182 kind of slot speedster you have going on there. Cam Ross, like we mentioned, a redshirt senior. He's really the only proven commodity in this wide receiver room. Maxwell Moss, he might be getting that wide receiver 2 look. I'm a huge fan of Omarion Dollison, but Phil Steele, we'll get to Phil Steele's preview in just a little bit. Phil Steele's preview didn't have Dollison kind of breaking through as one of the go-to guys in that wide receiver core. Troy Lewis, a transfer from ECU, Desmond Green. You got Tajee Hudson, who could potentially be really good. Dylan Williams, a freshman, he was showing out in the spring game. But if you kind of caught the rhythm of that, it's a lot of guys with potential. It's a lot of guys that don't have a ton of career catches. You lost Elijah Surratt. You lost, on the tight end side, you lost Zach Horton. You lost a lot of production. And I think Bennett's concern, as he's still frozen, he came back and froze again, is that they could underperform from the wide receiver perspective. I was on that train. He kind of talked me off of it because Tajee Hudson is very good. We talked with Phoenix Sproles earlier in this offseason, right when the season ended, and he was preparing for NFL draft and NFL opportunities. And he was really high on Dallas, and he was really high on Tajee Hudson. And it kind of bought me into it a little bit. So I think their wide receiver room should be fine overall, but it is a genuine concern because offensively, the offensive line returns a majority of the guys who got consistent snaps a year ago. You do lose Nick Kidwell, which is a pretty big loss. You lose Carter Miller, who's not as huge of a loss, but did have starting reps. But you bring back in a big way Tyshawn Wyatt. You have Josh Toner. You have these guys along the offensive line that got meaningful starts and meaningful reps a year ago. So the offensive line is set. You imagine the quarterback is set, a former Pac-12, all Pac-12 type of player, an honorable mention guy. his last year at Washington wasn't necessarily the best, but when he showed flashes, the dude has a bazooka. He is a very capable quarterback. And then behind him, you have Ayo Adeyi, you have George Pettaway. You have a lot of skill at that position. And then the wide receiver, you got Cam Ross, injury question mark, and then a bunch of question marks after that. You have guys that, I mean, should be able to perform, but it's a lot of unknown commodities. And so that wide receiver room overall could be great, could be fantastic, could also struggle a little bit to break through it and consistently figure some stuff out. But the plus side to all of this is really the tough part of the schedule is later on in the year. So if they're a little slow out of the gates, they don't know what their wide receiver rotation is going to be. Who's going to be wide receiver 1? Who's going to be playing in the slot? Who's going to be wide receiver 3? If you don't really figure that out come August 31st down at Jerry Richardson Stadium against Charlotte, you got a lot of time before the end of November, before the last 3 weeks of the season, when you're really going to have to know what your offense is made of when you're playing Marshall, App State. Who else are you playing at the end of it? You just got some big names and some tough games on the road and at home to finish out the season. So Bennett still not with us. So we'll quickly kind of look on over to some listener questions. He's restarting his computer. I just got a live text computer firing back up. We'll go over to a listener question or two while he boots his computer back up. We're going to talk a little bit about Phil Steele's college football preview, because in that he dropped his depth chart. Last year, his depth chart did have Alonzo Barnett as the QB1. It came true for one half of action. Then Jordan McLeod came in, but Phil Steele talks extensively with coaches and the coaching staff to get a real feel for how the team will be in the upcoming season, and sometimes has some insights in those depth charts. So we'll take a look at that and break that down when Bennett gets back. In the meantime, couple listener questions. Daniel Merriman dropped 2 of them. He had, are y'all higher on men's basketball or football heading into next year? And he also said, what position group do you think will underperform or overperform based on expectations for football? If you have any listener questions, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is, drop it in the comments, in the Twitter replies, and it'll come up here through StreamYard and we will answer them as well. I'll go Daniel Merriman's first one. What position group do you think will underperform or overperform based on expectations? A position group that I think will overperform, it's a little twofold, and they're almost one and the same. One's the offensive version of the defensive one. I'm going to say the secondary is going to overperform. I know I've been poo-pooing on the secondary. I've been worried about them since the start of last year. I've been questioning some things. Look, Chauncey Logan now in year 3, I think will take a big time step forward. Freshman year, he was fantastic as that boundary corner. Then he stepped over to the field corner. He was flanked by D'Angelo Pons. Wasn't looking the strongest, but I think he'll take a big step forward in year 3. And you bring that together with what's happening in the secondary. You bring in Ray Williams. You have Chris Sheeran. You have Jacob Thomas, who's a returner. You have some recruits you've brought in, and Regan and Flo. I think the secondary will overperform expectations in 2024 based on expectations. A position group I think could potentially underperform in 2024. I'm going to go with, and this might be a little controversial, I think the offensive line may actually underperform in 2024 as we have finally gotten Bennett Conlon back.
Wi-Fi troubles over here. I just wanted to give you a chance to shine.
That was a lot of talking. I think the offensive line won't perform, but we'll get back to that.
You think it's going to underperform?
In just a little bit. That was a good tease, right?
Yeah.
All right. Now that I'm done talking to myself, I talked about the wide receiver issues. If you want to harp on that at all a little bit, I talked about how Cam Ross is the only real experienced, and kind of what your worry is and what my worry was until you talked me off the ledge was that when you talk about the JMU wide receiver room, it's a lot of coulds, it's a lot of shoulds, it's a lot of potential, it's a lot of young guys. Really, it's Tajee Hudson, who played kind of was the wide receiver to start the year, then got pushed down the depth chart. You got Cam Ross, who even as much as he's been performing is a question mark because of his injury concerns. Did you have anything else to add on wide receivers and why you're a little worried about that position group heading into next year?
Similar to last year, and last year it worked out really, really well for everybody.
Elijah Surratt.
Yeah, but just I guess concerns more so of like I think they're good enough at every position group to go like 8-4, but some position groups, wide receiver included, if they want to make the college football playoff, I think I have some questions there given how unproven they are. But the potential's there, like you said.
Yeah, but potential. But that potential could also become no potential, and all of a sudden you're relying on a running back room that is reloaded, but can they do anything if you don't have a passing game? I was looking at Io Adei's stats.
Yeah.
I forgot how good he was last year.
Very good.
7 games of 100 yards or more.
He's a great running back.
That was a good get in the transfer portal.
That was a big one. Was surprised kind of when it dropped. Also kind of surprised he wasn't at a Power 5. But he's a Duke.
He's a Duke, and yeah.
They got a lot of good players. You mentioned the Phil Steele preview dropping right here.
How thick is that book?
Pretty thick.
Wow.
I got the Midwest cover myself.
Why?
There was a Wisconsin guy on it.
Did you pick that? Did you get a pick which cover? Oh, okay.
I saw the Wisconsin guy, and I was like, and it just felt more like football to me. Michigan, Iowa, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Yeah. Instead of like these, like Ohio State, Bama. I don't need that crap in my life.
You're right.
But anyway, the reason I got it, other than it being sort of a legendary preview, was because last year he had it in the summer, and he wrote that Alonzo Barnett was like the projected starting quarterback. And we probably should have read into that more because he spoke to Kurt Cignetti for an hour for the preview.
I remember us talking about that, though.
Somebody DM'd us that, and we were like, whatever.
Well, we even brought up, and we were like, there's no way McLeod's going to be the starter. McLeod's going to win Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. We were right.
We were right. Yeah,
but
back and say that we're right.
We did backdoor our way into that because if Alonzo Barnett played well in the first half against Bucknell, he could have been the starter for the rest of the year.
But he did speak to Chesney. So the things that stood out with his projected starters, I won't go through it all because you should pay for this product, but a couple of maybe surprises. Taylor Thompson, starting tight end. Maybe they actually use Taylor. Maybe they actually use Taylor Thompson.
Woo! Let's use Taylor Thompson. Revenge game, August 31st.
Yes, that's something to keep an eye on. Nothing else was too surprising, to be honest with you. Well, and then defensively, DJ Barksdale starting at Rover. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. And then Kai Holmes starting at safety. This is before Ray Williams transferred in from Howard, I believe, because I don't see him listed on the depth chart, and he's going to be on the depth chart.
He's going to be on the depth chart. He probably will be
the starter.
Next to Jacob Thomas. Terrence Spence, you thought could potentially be a safety, a rover, maybe a corner. He is right now listed as the boundary corner, and Chauncey Logan will retain his spot as the field corner, according to Phil Steele.
And Chris Sheeran from UConn, the UConn transfer, is listed as a safety. He's got experience playing both, similar to Williams. So wonder if those guys find themselves playing some interesting spots. But like Barksdale starting at Rover would certainly be interesting. I just think they brought in Ja'Kai Young from Gardner-Webb, who has a lot of experience too. Steele listed him as the backup. We'll see how that goes in the competition, but a lot more experience for Young than Barksdale, and actually a little bit more height as well in a similar weight. So I think that'll be an interesting one if that is, in fact, the competition.
Anything else stood out to you? Where's Terry Lockett looking like on there? He's starting.
They got him a starting defensive tackle.
Yeah. Eric O'Neill starting edge.
Yep. They had Amar Thomas starting on the edge as well. We broke the news that Abi Nwabuku-Akonji is no longer a member of the program. I thought he might be a starting defensive end, but he's not with the team anymore, so certainly he won't start.
He's also not in the transfer portal for what we know.
I think he just left the team.
He may have retired from football.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure on that. That's just floating a possibility, but 2 season-ending injuries in 4 years, he may have decided to focus on post grad. Lloyd Summerall, is he on there, or is Kahari Mans?
Both. So they have Mans listed as Thomas's backup and Summerall listed as O'Neill's backup, which I think makes sense because they would be considered sort of like I think, like a pass rushing specialist almost.
Yeah.
So maybe they come in certain situations. They're definitely going to play because both those guys can wreak havoc off the edge. I think they'll rotate more this year.
And Raymond Scott, the linebacker out of Fresno State, USC. Is he a backup for a linebacker?
They have him. So they have Torres Jones and Jacob Dobbs starting for a little 4-2-5 alignment. They have Hendrick and Scott as backups. I think Scott they have backing up Dobbs, and then Hendrick backing up Jones.
Nathan asks, is a depth chart released? I just joined. No, this is from Phil Steele's preview. Bennett has a big old book that he bought of Phil Steele, and he talked with Coach Chesney for about an hour. I believe a few other positional coaches quickly, and kind of got a rough lay of the land with what the depth chart will be. It's not official. It's kind of more so Phil Steele's educated guess after talking with the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I think some of it probably depends on the coach. Like, it seemed like maybe Cignetti was giving a lot last year with Barnett being the projected starter and then actually winning the job. Right, because that did check out with what Cignetti said, where he took pretty much every first team rep for all of fall camp.
And then some things came out later in the season where it was Jordan McLeod was slow to transfer in, or something happened where it sounded like
fill something out in April, and Cignetti seemed mad at him it was very odd. Yeah, but anyway, but also this one I thought worth noting here just before we get into it. We're not doing it with the local media this year. I'm staying out of any conversations, but to be clear, and based on this, and this is straight from Phil Steele, I want to make sure I get this right. Barnett and Atkins are competing for the backup job. So Dylan Morris, in his mind, Phil Steele, his preview, firmly entrenched as the starting quarterback. So miss me with any QB competition stuff in the fall.
I would be absolutely flabbergasted if Dylan Morris is not the starter. I feel like I said this last year. I feel like I said this last year, and I was flabbergasted.
I just want to put that out there. I also think there's a lot of benefit to having your starting quarterback and the experienced guy take those first team reps in fall camp. I don't know what they were doing last year. The McLeod didn't get any of them, but it was
McLeod
done.
McLeod got no first team reps, and they didn't tackle.
And you could tell, they took a while to get going and really find their groove offensively, become highly consistent throughout the season. And they kept blaming McLeod for his habits. It's well, maybe if you gave him a chance to develop his habits in August. God, gonna miss that guy though.
He won. Quickly, 4-2-5 setup right now. So 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 guys in the secondary. Chauncey Logan on one side, Terrence Spence on the other. DJ Barksdale as the rover. And then in the back, you have Jacob Thomas and Kai Holmes as the potential starting safeties. That could change with Ray Williams coming in, who's not listed, Chris Sheeran. You mentioned, though, you kind of may have wanted a 4-3-4, more of a traditional old school NFL outlook where you got the 3 linebackers, you have the 4 down linemen, and you're taking the rover out of the equation. Do you still feel that way, or did you listen to what I said where you think it's more beneficial to have a 4-2-5?
I like the 4-2-5. I think you're correct on the 4-2-5. I also think, I don't know how well JMU's linebackers have fared in the past in coverage. I feel like sometimes that's a bit of a concern. So I do like the idea of having those 2 really talented linebackers. And Torres Jones and Jacob Dobbs is one of the best linebacking duos in the G5.
Torres Jones, we forget, and maybe when I say we, it's more so me, because I have to remind myself how good he was in 2022. In 2020, when he was healthy, he was great. The start of last year, he was good. Then he got injured, and I believe either against, was it Bucknell or was it against UVA? Then he was out for a month. His arm was in a sling.
You could tell something was bothering him during the UVA game with his arm, and you could tell it kind of impacted him all year.
So I'm really excited to see Torres Jones next to Jacob Dobbs, because Torres Jones was a Sun Belt. I thought he was better than Jalen Walker in 2022.
I think in many ways he played, especially an aggressive run stopping tackler. really, really good. So that duo seems great. I think the secondary, I'm less concerned about given the transfer portal haul, and I think Phil Steele's depth chart is pretty debatable, to be honest with you, in the secondary. Just because Ray Williams is in, I think Chris Sheeran of UConn has a good chance to actually break into a starting role, and then I think Ja'Kai Young too. I think they added a ton of talent in the spring session, which I don't know when all of those guys were exactly added. So exactly how the conversation went with Chesney when he's doing his 2 deep like that. Like it might have been some of these guys are projected to start, and then you bring in the transfer, and then Chesney sees the transfer on the field competing, and they break into a starting role. But either way, I feel a lot better about the secondary because they brought in some really, really good transfers.
I would expect the 2 deep to almost change on a weekly basis because Chesney feels very much like a compete for your job every week, and the best person will play. So that might be the depth chart today, but come August 31st, it could look vastly different. But you mentioned it, the transfer portal in the spring, Sheeran defensive back, Young defensive back, Mann's a linebacker. Then you add Ray Williams, a defensive back, Jordan Taylor, a defensive back from Tusculum, I believe, and then a defensive tackle. They just really hammered home defensive side of the ball. A few wide receivers, a running back, but really you could tell the focus, especially after Pons left, was we got to get a couple guys back here to beef up this secondary.
Yeah, they also added Raquan Adkins from Cincinnati, who has since posted on Twitter a bunch that he's looking for a new home. So worth noting there, because I don't think anyone's posted that officially. But he appears to not be a Duke just based on social media stuff. Because if he was, he wouldn't be posting looking for a new home. So I think that's safe to say. He was an underclassman, though, so I don't know exactly how much he might have played. But still a lot of additions, even without Adkins joining the team.
Something to note, and this has kind of been our running, not joke, but during the FCS era, they brought in Antoine Booth, the Michigan State transfer, Travell Mullen, an Indiana transfer who's a former 4-star, Nakai Meredith, an NC State transfer. Nakai Meredith either graduated or left the program ahead of last year. Travell Mullen, not anywhere in Phil Steele's depth chart.
He's in there.
Is he?
He's in there somewhere. Let me find him.
Antoine Booth is.
He's they have him as like not the back, so he wouldn't make the 2 deep, but he's in the depth chart as like the second guy behind Chauncey Logan.
Okay,
but like he doesn't seem like he's close to breaking through to play.
So we'll continue to monitor Travell Mullen and Antoine Booth updates.
I want to get back real quick to that question that was asked. Would you do that? Would you start Ray Williams? I kind of did that. You could start Ray Williams, Chris Sheeran, and Ja'Kai Young.
I think that.
And then what do you do, Logan? Well, I guess that's hard because you've got.
I'm interested to see how Jacob Thomas does in this. What is it? Hemphill? Is that the defensive coordinator?
Yeah.
Lyle or Kyle?
Yeah, Lyle.
Thank you. Thought it. Yeah. I'm interested to see how Jacob Thomas takes to Lyle Hemphill's defense, because I don't know if he was fully into the defense last year because there were some questionable lapses in coverage and decision making. Be interested to see Jacob Thomas in year 2 under a new defensive coordinator, how he plays. Depending on how things shake out, though, Ray Williams, Chris Sheeran, on paper looks like a really good secondary with Ja'Kai Young as that rover. That looks good.
Yeah, and then you've also probably hard to take Thomas out of the starting lineup, at least to start the season. Chesney seemed pretty high on him in the spring. And then Chauncey Logan's probably a starter. And then I think Spence is probably a starter too, so that would be 6. So I don't know that they'll end up doing the Sheeran Young Williams thing, just because to me, Spence, Logan, Thomas are like locks. I'd be surprised if they're not starting week 1, those 3.
Yeah, and I'd be shocked if they ever played with less than 2 linebackers on the field.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. So I think it's Williams, Sheeran, Young, and some others kind of competing to get the final 2 spots. But then I also wouldn't be shocked if they occasionally rotated, especially at safety.
Yeah, and this means on paper they've got some depth.
Yeah, it's kind of like you mentioned it, sort of the Moneyball approach, where they didn't have a lot of depth maybe going into the pre-Pons transfer, but they obviously lose a really good player and added a bunch of very solid players to replace him.
You can't replace. Who was it that they lost? I forgot the line from Moneyball, but you can replace him in the
Giambi.
Giambi.
Giambi, yeah.
but you can replace them in the aggregate.
That's what they seem to have done.
And yeah. All right.
That's enough football for now, huh?
Well, did you want to talk about knees?
Yeah, I guess quickly, Katie Harper had a nice piece on, I think it's J.D. Rayner, an offensive line commit for the 2025 recruiting class. I just thought it was funny because he played tight end in Massachusetts, but he's moving to offensive line. And I guess he's grown up liking Ohio State or something, but he talked with Ohio State coaches and they told him like they're oogling and ogling at his knee size. And they're like, whoa, those are massive. Like you could play O-line, like you could hold 300 pounds. And that's just like the most weird college football recruiting broken brain thing that I've ever heard. You just see like a 17-year-old kid who plays football and you're like, dude, your knees, they're so big. Very strange. But I thought it was a fun, insightful read. And it seems like they're early on. Don't ask us about soccer, Ben. Jack, what's your prediction for the Euros?
America.
That's a good pick. I feel like what they're doing with Greg is impressive stuff.
If
Man,
you're
check out
if you
Harper's
want
piece.
check out Katie Harper's piece. And if you want good soccer content, check out Because CONCACAF.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Anything on basketball? Anything on basketball you want to touch on?
I don't know. They look like they should be good. They posted some pictures of them working out, which is always exciting.
Yeah, good for them. Work out, man.
Chesney works out with the team.
That's weird, right? I feel like that's odd.
Didn't get videos. Signetti in there just curling.
The funniest part about all of this is that you are like lagging on my side. I don't know if you're lagging on the actual stream. So I'm just seeing you do these curls about 5 to 10 seconds after you say it. Yeah, Chesney's in there working out with him. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Listener questions.
Right. That brings us to listener questions. I touched on one briefly. What position group do you think will underperform? Which position group do you think overperform? I said overperform secondary because I've been poo-pooing them, but I feel like they've done enough to be good. Underperform, I said offensive line.
Oh, no. Too much hype?
Maybe it's us creating the hype. Maybe it's me having flashbacks to last year without Kidwell and Wyatt for some parts of the season. Wyatt's coming off of a season-ending injury. He went into the transfer portal and he came back, which is awesome. Maybe the collective was able to retain him and they did a great job with that.
No comment.
However, it's a little worrisome that a guy coming off of an injury couldn't get. Maybe I'm looking way too much into this, but then it's a bunch of guys who all got meaningful reps, but I feel like we might be overinflating how important those reps are.
NetCredit is here to say yes, because you're more than a credit score. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Everyone loves a good family mystery, especially one with as many twists and turns as June's Journey. June's Journey is a hidden object mystery mobile game that puts your detective skills to the test. Embark on a journey into a gripping narrative where intrigue, secrets, and unexpected twists await at every turn. Play as June Parker and investigate beautifully detailed scenes of the 1920s, whilst uncovering the mystery of her sister's murder. Rediscover the magic of June's childhood as you roam the vast estate filled with secrets and memories waiting to be uncovered. Gather compelling evidence and decipher clues, immersing yourself in a captivating world of discovery that will keep you hooked until the very end. Compete with friends and other players to see who can solve cases the fastest or achieve the highest scores. Are you ready to jump back in time, detectives? Download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android. Discover the secrets of the past. Download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android.
You're back.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi is too bad for me to share any picks for the same question.
Okay.
We're holding on by a thread here.
If you drop out, yeah. The coldest 11. Are you surprised Chesney talks to the media less than Cignetti? Yeah, so far, but there haven't been a lot of opportunities for Chesney to talk to Cignetti. I'll also say Cignetti was in our
Talk to
DMs quite.
Cignetti.
Huh? Oh, sorry. Talk to Chesney.
No, talk to the media.
What did I say?
Right? There's opportunities for Chesney to talk to Cignetti. That'd be sick if he was calling him like constantly, though. He's like, yeah, this is impossible. How do you run this team?
Are you surprised Chesney? Okay. Cignetti, we'll see. Well, I'm very intrigued to see if Chesney tells him no QB1 questions like he did last offseason.
Well, he didn't even do it like on record. He did it, I guess, privately. So then it came out like 3 weeks into camp when we were like, why is nobody asking? And they're like, well, he told us not to. It's like, you should have led with that. You should have told us that he told you not to. Otherwise, I think you're incompetent.
Look, my man Cignetti was in my DMs maybe once.
He's also not going to like punch you in the face if you ask. You know what I mean? Like, don't ask. Like, what is he going to kill you?
Yeah. I also think Chesney's going to be very open, or maybe not open, but like gives the aura and perception of open during these summer workouts.
Yeah. Those will be interesting because every day is the best day of your life. We'll see if that's true week 3 of camp.
Nathan asked record prediction for women's basketball. Hold on for next week's episode. We'll break that down.
Oh, can I see a schedule first?
Yeah, I don't know what the schedule is.
We should do them pre-schedule and then post-schedule.
Okay. 30 wins for both. This is a question for you. Are you higher on men's basketball or football for next year?
Men's basketball? And I'm very high on football, but I'll say men's basketball.
I kind of agree with you. I'm also high on football. I don't think I'm as high on football as you, but I think I'm higher for men's basketball. The Mark Freeman edition. Whew.
That's a loaded roster.
Here's your favorite question from Dirty Bird 713, who was in the YouTube comments earlier. I've heard a lot about all the good things to be excited about. Dirty Bird really is leaning into our whole shtick of being just Debbie Downers.
Let's go, Dirty Bird.
Where do you expect us to take a step back this season, if anywhere? Losing staff players is obvious. Can you expand into which areas the portal halls have been the weakest so far? Facebook, men's basketball, others too, if you want. Kind of like a 2-3 part question. So hit me. Where do you expect us to take a step back, if any, and where has there been anything lacking in the transfer portal?
I'll say for football, one of my concerns is star power. And that could easily like be fixed or changed, or some guys can step up and become stars. I just like the amount of guys they lost that are just Sunbelt studs, like McLeod, Surratt, and then like guys who graduated even like the whole defensive line was gross.
Fisher, Walker,
there's a
Kamara.
There was just
you got
a lot
3
of like stars. Pons, who they kept and then lost. Like there were a
not
lot
even
of
like just studs. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The talent level was just so good on some of the guys they lost. I think they replaced with really quality players too. But you've got so many changes. It would have been nice to keep, like, if they had somehow kept like Pons and Surratt or something, just like season changing if you have Surratt, I think. Because like the wide receiver room with Surratt and Cam Ross and like Dollar,
There's
like
no
I don't know,
question.
that it becomes unbelievable, and you become, like, to me, like the clear favorite almost in the conference. I think he's that good and helps a position group that has questions that much. So that would be kind of my concern, is that you have a lot of spots that Jalen Green is one of the best pass rushers in program history. The season he had last year is unbelievable. So if Eric O'Neal comes in as good as I think he is, they're going to be all right and they'll replace some of these guys. I guess the question is, there's a lot of assumptions of like these stars can be replaced, and that's just hard to do.
Yeah. Do I expect him to take a step back? I kind of do expect him to take a step back. It's tough to replicate what was done. You lost a lot of talent. And I'm not saying a step back means they very well could take a step back and still be in contention for a college football playoff spot. I think
Yeah.
they're not taking, a 5-loss type of setback, but maybe they're losing 1 or 2 games, 2 or 3 games, and you're kind of sniffing around the college football playoff all season, but maybe you hit a little bit of a rough patch in November, whatever it may be. I think you're taking a step back though this year. It's just so tough to replace the Fishers, the Walkers, the Kamaras, the Ponds, the Jalen Green, the Carpenter, the Surratt, the Reggie Brown, the Phoenix Sproles, the Nick Kidwell, the Jordan McLeod, the head coach, the great offensive coordinator, the QB whisperer. Like every part of the
It's a
team was
lot.
decimated. But you then do add great coach in Bob Chesney, a bright young mind in Dean Kennedy, Lyle Hemphill, who has Power 5 experience and is supposed to be a great defensive coordinator. You add in Jacob Dobbs, who's a huge star and is going to be a stud defensively. Pair him with a healthy Taurus Jones. You get Eric O'Neill. Like you do bring in a lot of great stuff, but there's a potential you take a step back. Portal haul wise, I think for men's basketball, I don't think they have a weakness. And I don't think they've
Such a
been
good
weak.
haul.
Men's basketball, that portal haul has them poised to be a dark horse Sweet 16 type of team, a potential at-large type of team. Football, weakest wide receiver for the reason you mentioned on why they might take a step back. No star power. You got Cam Ross, who's good and great at times, but has some injury concerns. You didn't bring in like a stud wide receiver, which you probably never were in the era of the transfer portal, but would have been nice to maybe get like an FCS standout.
I think that's where Surratt was kind of cool, where it's like, oh, he had 700 receiving yards as an FCS freshman. Like, that's intriguing. They brought in the ODU transfer in Granger and then Penny from San Diego State, who both did some nice things in the group of 5, but it wasn't quite that same level of production. So I think those guys can help you. But yeah, it's the same thing. And we've noticed it in the past, right? Like when Chris Thornton was in games, the ability for him to separate helped everybody get open. Where if you have a bunch of good receivers, but they're playing a great secondary and nobody's really separating, well, then Dylan Morris starts to look not as good. And then the pass rush or the offensive line is holding up against the pass rush. It just becomes a lot harder if you've got things sort of out of sync.
Now, we've seen it where the wide receivers have been great for a long time with the Chris Thorntons, the Elijah Surratts, the Hoodie Wells. Maybe now you have just the best running back room you've had in 5 years, and that opens up your passing game. That may have been their approach. Who knows? Alyssa Fitchett, with the Sun Belt potentially being the highest ranked group of 5 in football, do you see that having a significant impact on their rankings for the college football playoff?
This is a great question.
I love this question.
I think, this is my opinion, I do think it helps. If you're playing in the best group of 5, I think it helps. I think Liberty getting stomped by Oregon actually is going to make the committee really rethink strength of schedule a little bit more. So if you play in the toughest G5 conference, I think that'll help you. The one thing I will say is I've seen a lot of people say the Sun Belt is the best G5. So that means the team that wins the Sun Belt will go to the college football playoff. I think that's very faulty logic. Like you could win the Sun Belt with like 2 losses and Boise State plays in a worse Mountain West, but like goes undefeated with a Power 5 win. They're obviously getting in over JMU. Like the idea that all you have to do is win the Sun Belt is not true. Like I think you would need to win the Sun Belt, and depending on what other teams do, like you might need to beat North Carolina or only lose to North Carolina by 3 and then beat the crap out of Charlotte and Ball State and Gardner Webb and have some really convincing wins and beat an App State team that wins a bunch of other games. I don't think like just winning the Sun Belt is enough, even if it's the best, because some other team, like we saw last year, Liberty got the New Year's 6 berth. Conference USA sucks. Like, but they were a really good team that had good metrics or whatever and blew everybody out. So they got in. So I do think you need to do more than just win the conference to get in the playoff.
I agree. Dirty Bird said, God, I would hope the committee stops rewarding weak strength of schedule after Liberty stunk it up.
My hot take, Liberty, even if they go undefeated, has absolutely no chance of getting in the playoff. I think they'll lose at App State, but I don't think Liberty has any chance this year based on the strength of schedule.
Nathan is preaching to the choir here. I'm kind of nervous about the Charlotte game. If you check 247, they got a decent amount of P5s. They have a very good transfer haul. I'm saying, guys, I don't think Charlotte's going to go 2-10 in the American Athletic Conference. And I think at the end of the year, if JMU can win that game, it'll look like a good win. That's all I'm saying. I think that might boost their resume. JMU _71. What do y'all see as Chesney's strategy? Is it more high school recruiting or transfer portal recruiting?
For lack of a better answer, I think it's like every coach, there's probably going to be an element of both. It seems like he is taking the high school stuff pretty seriously, but I think every coach, like if you want to have a really good team that year, you have to fill immediate needs in the portal, and he's done that.
Yeah. This is not on Twitter. This is from YouTube. Do you think the student section leaving at halftime will improve next season if the team has the hype of a potential college football playoff berth?
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'll improve. I think if there's hype, there's excitement around the team. You saw it last year against App State. I mean, it's a huge game. Game day was there. Huge implications for a lawsuit that was never going to be filed, but that's besides the point. Huge implications across the board. And it was packed heading into overtime in Bridgeforth. I think if every game has that type of feeling and every game later on in the season matters, I think you'll see people staying.
Yeah, I think the home schedule is kind of clunky, so that could be a little disappointing. Gardner-Webb, Ball State, Coastal on a Thursday could be kind of cool. Southern Miss is homecoming, but homecoming should have some good people. Then you've got Georgia State and Marshall. Marshall's senior day, but it's also, I think it's.
Hopefully they don't wear black jerseys, man.
I think they announced it. I think black jerseys are doing a different game this year.
Yeah, they are. So. I think they should just burn those jerseys. I don't think they ever should see the light of day.
Never.
I mean, they're not even part of JMU's color scheme. So why are we even having them? It's honestly a disgrace to the institution.
You know what else would be cool, though? We're talking about the home crowd. If they're like clearly in line for the playoff and they're hosting the Sun Belt Championship against Jordan McLeod and Texas State, that would be so much fun.
Injected into my veins. That would be awesome.
And in Harrisonburg in December, you got Texas State coming up. Maybe a little cold.
That sounds beautiful.
That'd be cool.
JMU _71. Where does the current recruiting class stack up against the rest of the Sun Belt group of 5? Class of 2025 rankings are still very much in their infancy. JMU, I haven't been following along with what the other ones are. Recruiting profiles probably haven't even been updated for G5s.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put too much stock into those rankings anyway, because 24/7 and On 3 and others, like their G5 high school rankings are pretty bad, I would say.
Yeah. Though you'll get like a 3-star, and the second they pick up an offer from JMU and Akron, they become like a no-star.
Yes. Or if they'll be like a no-star or whatever, or maybe like a 3-star, and then they'll move to a P5 and they like immediately become a 4-star. It's like, what? It's the same kid. Like he just ate breakfast. Now he's a 4-star.
83 Duke. On a more serious note, what's the primary helmet color this year?
I saw this one earlier and was just put my brain in a pretzel. What do you think?
What's your name? Your brain in a pretzel. White.
That's a good pick. Yeah, that makes sense. White would make sense.
I think primary helmet. I also think there's a good chance they wear like 4 or 5 different helmets this year, and none of them are the quote unquote primary.
Right.
But I'm thinking white with JMU word mark.
That's what they did a lot last year. I thought that was solid. And then you can wear like a purple jersey or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think about gold? Do you think he tries to bring Chesney gold helmets more?
Maybe for a game
or two, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't like gold helmets. I'd like a purple helmet.
I thought the white looked good. Yeah.
I'd like a purple helmet with Duke script.
Do they have the black one with the purple script? Is that what they have? I feel like they have a script. Yeah. I'd love to see them do more. I like the black uniform so much, man.
I do too.
Like, I hope they just wear those every game.
Last one from Danny Wood. Do you think our defense will be as good as this past year? No.
No.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. Last year's defense was just like ungodly good with one of the best, if not the best pass rusher in the college football.
Yeah, I also think because of that, fans have to get like that rushing stuff out of their head. Where if they're allowing like 130 rushing yards a game instead of like 30, that's okay because their pass yard stuff will, like if you're looking at the totals, I feel like that's going to be an issue with JMU fans early in the season. It's like, look at us, we're getting gashed. We gave 120 total rushing yards. So I think that's one where there also Signetti was like all about stopping the run to the point where he would put corners who had no business being on an island and just get repeatedly cooked. And he was like, 30 rushing yards allowed. We did it.
Yeah, he would stack the box.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a message came in and I was reading it while I was talking. I lost my
I
entire
saw.
train
I
of
didn't know if you wanted to tell us what it was.
He would like bring the safeties up like a yard or two, or even bring one of them into the box to have a heavy box, and it'd be like, "All right, Jacob Thomas, good luck."
Yeah. So I think that they probably won't be as good, but they'll be decent. I also think like they're going to get better in other areas, such as running the football.
Yeah, let's hope. Anything else you got to add?
No, I'm excited for football season. We're still a ways out, though.
Yeah, we are 66 days away from kickoff down in the Queen City. You going to that game?
Considering it.
I'm going. So,
okay.
If you want to stop in Richmond and we can then carpool down, yeah, we're doing all of our plans right here on the stream.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That one, because I wanted to go to either that one or UNC, and I can't.
And I know a few people. I know a few people in Charlotte. If you didn't know, that could give us free lodging.
Oh, okay.
I did live there for quite some time.
That makes it a lot more convenient than the Chapel Hill game.
Yeah, I wonder actually if I could just sneak into my old apartment. I wonder if they rented it out yet.
We could be squatters if that's.
Yeah, we'd be squatters.
This is a good question.
Before we get on out of here,
day.
This is Dirty Birds. I mean, Bennett's over here doing his MJ flu game impression. Dirty Bird is out here doing, Kobe 81 game, another just all-time great performance. Hype for EA College Football 2024.
When you upload the podcast, it's just gonna have to be like the Dirty Bird pod. I don't have a game console. Haven't played video games in years. I'm talking to you today, talking to my brother too. I got to get myself a console.
You don't have a console of any sort? I think it's July 24th.
No, I'm out here. I just read books. I better my mind.
You nerd.
Better my body. Better my soul.
You got to better your body.
A lot of television.
I'm watching The Blacklist.
Hey, it's starting to get there. I got a supplement routine right now. Vitamin D, vitamin B, among some other supplements. I'm starting to put some weight back, starting to get my health back. So
hell yeah, finally putting some. I was watching some old podcasts. This is normally post-stream conversation, but we're having it midstream.
Yes.
Or I guess end of stream. I was looking at some past streams from like the 2020, 2021 era.
Yeah.
You've lost a lot of weight, man. Congratulations.
Some of that was, I had like at times a fatter face in 2020 and 2021. Pandemic, some people it made them move more. Not me. I watched like all of Ozark with my family. It was just like drinking a lot, eating a lot.
It sounds like a great time, honestly.
Release date, July 19th.
So you got to I'm an Xbox guy. I've been an Xbox guy my entire life. Some people might not like that, but I've been Xbox One now. I have to first get a job before I can buy an Xbox Series X or whatever it is. I hope it comes out on Xbox One so that I can play it.
Yeah, I don't even understand the difference. They have different types of Xboxes now.
Yeah, but I would say Xbox.
Yeah.
Just because that's what I've always used, and that way we could play online together. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, so how does that work? Do you buy physical games anymore? Or do you download things?
You could, but you can just get the digital copy.
You don't have to put anything in a disc anymore.
No.
So there's no concern that like my local GameStop, I sound like I'm like 53, that my local thing is out of this. Like they don't run out of digital copies.
No, you're fine. Everyone tweet Bennett.
That's good. Please do, because like Caroline will be like reading books on tape and she's like, I'm in line. And I'm like, it's on tape.
Yeah, that's a library. She's going she's going through the library, and the library only has a certain amount of licenses they can
That
give
doesn't.
out
Yeah, that I
for
hate
free.
that. That doesn't
Yeah,
make
but
sense to me.
it's library. It's it's licenses, it's library, it's all free. You're paying, you're gonna pay, it's gonna cost you about $70 if you want like the just game.
I guess that makes sense, right? So you're not ripping people off. It just bothers me when it's like, oh, I don't have access to this audio file. And I'm like, they have them. But yeah, you're right. You should probably pay for it. So never mind. That's on me. But I don't have to get a
So
physical game. You don't get that spinning red wheel anymore?
the Red Ring of Death,
Uh-huh.
you haven't played Xbox in quite some time, huh?
Like a decade, yeah.
Yeah, so no, that doesn't exist anymore. You
Oh,
just
man.
go on to the you get an Xbox, and then you can just
Uh-huh.
search for a game and download the digital copy.
You got to hook it up still to power and everything?
Yeah, you still have, yes, power is still required to power up
Is it
a
as many
station.
hooks and stuff?
There's one plug for the power and then one plug for the TV.
That's less than it used to be. You used to have like
It
an audio
is.
plug, and that's
You
sick. Okay, that
really
makes it
haven't
easy.
played.
Well, no, this is good because I was worried that like, yeah, I got to find a way to do this though that isn't disruptive to everyone else in my life.
Well, it will be. You can just come over here into my new basement and we can just play together. Phrasing.
You tell Eva that all that I'm
We've-
just gonna be living there for a week in your basement playing video games.
Look, we're 2 blocks away from 3 Notched. There's a made-up guest bed right now for you. Come on down, and we can have ourselves a fun week.
Booze it up. Yeah.
Booze it up. Put some weight
I
back
haven't
on
played
you.
in a while. I wonder if I'm gonna be bad. That would suck. Like if I get this, I'm all excited and I'm like getting torched by the computer.
Well, just put it on rookie mode, at least for like the first week.
I'll get it back. I used to be really good. I was really an elite player.
If you get it, I'm thinking about starting. Like we could do like a dynasty, JMU Sports News
Because
dynasty.
you can play other people on the internet.
Yeah,
which you
on
could
the internet.
when I was there. You could when I was a kid, but I
Okay,
didn't do
yeah,
it.
you
You had
could.
to pay for something.
So I'm pretty sure that's still the case. I just have it hooked up to a credit card that just gets billed every month. But if you can do a dynasty, you can have like your own team and play people like on a weekly basis.
No way.
So it's like an
No
online,
way.
like fantasy football video
you
game.
can- How's that work? But like, so if I'm not in, then what does that mean? What are we getting a JMU Sports News Dynasty? I
So
don't know
like
what
you
that
could
means.
have, I'm just throwing random numbers out. You could have like 10 people all together. You each pick your own team and then you play through the season. So like you could do it on a weekly basis where like every Saturday everyone logs on and plays their game. You
But
could
what if
like
you don't play each other?
So there's like 10 people. Everyone has their own. So then you just got to play each other or play the computer and you work through your schedule all together.
What if I go 4-8 and everyone else makes a bowl and I never play them throughout the season? Am I just like,
Well, what you could do
I
is
never
hit up
interact with anyone and I don't.
you're freezing so bad right now. You could reach out to the Virginia Attorney General and try to get actually, since you're in Maryland, the Maryland Attorney General, and see if they can file a lawsuit on your behalf.
That's a good. Well, I'm not even bowl eligible.
Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe I
Well,
reach out to the college football playoff committee spokesperson again because I don't believe him the first time, and I say, "But can I get into a New Year's Six?"
All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I got to figure that out. That's going to take me a long time to figure out.
We got at least one more podcast before it comes out, so you can still ask some
Okay.
questions, and everyone in our comment section can help you out.
Yeah, if anybody has any advice or any knowledge that stay stuck on third string and lose QB competition, probably.
All right. For Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. This has been the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll see you guys sometime in the next couple of weeks, at least one more time before college football 2024 drops.
NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. If approved, applications are typically funded the next business day or sooner. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partner. NetCredit. Credit to the people.